My name is Steve Cadigan. I'm going to be moderating this panel. Thank you for choosing the best panel for this hour. You guys have made the right choice. Thank you. And how about a round of applause for actually a live conference? My gosh. A strange reality. We walk around and we know we won't recognize somebody because we're all masked, but we also know we won't be recognized. So I remember a point early in my career when I was with a company, we grew really fast and we knew everyone, but at a certain point when you hit around 500 people, you don't know everyone, you start looking at the badges. So our tilt is going to be in full force this week. I want to just thank you again for choosing this panel. We've got about 40 minutes to rock and roll here. We've got a great panel. I'm going to start by asking them to please introduce yourself, tell us where you're located, and a little bit what you're engaged with, and then we're going to dive in. So, Jacinta, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jacinta Jimenez. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm a board-certified executive coach, and I'm also vice president of coach innovation at BetterUp. And I'm from San Francisco, California.
Bay Area contingent, I think. So I'm Christine Tao. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Sounding Board. Previously spent about 15 years in tech at Google and YouTube, and now really on a mission to help develop the world's most impactful leaders. So, and also from the Bay Area.
Jeanette Winters, currently faculty member at the University of Houston School of Business. Also a managing director at Parish Partners, which is an HR consulting firm, and a certified executive coach, which I've done for about 10 years, which is what brings me to the panel today.
And Troy Cozy, managing director at Franklin Covey. Prior to that, co-founder at Strive, which was recently acquired by Franklin Covey. Cool full circle moment today. Spent about 10 years in tech, 7 of those years at LinkedIn. And Steve was my first CPO at LinkedIn. So here we are.
Right. Okay, we're not going to give you a lot of our bios. Please feel free if you want to check us out on LinkedIn or the ASU GSV app to learn more about the backgrounds. But we've met a few times to prepare what we hope is going to be a valuable session for you. And the first thing that we wanted to cover is coaching, the definition of coaching, because everyone's coming to the panel here with a different perspective. You all may have a different perspective on it. But before we get into the true nature of what we talk about is we all need a life coach and true innovations in scale coaching. Let's talk about what is coaching? Because some of you have called it professional coaching, some coaching. There is no right or wrong answer here. I think depending upon where you see it. How do you guys want to define it? Do we want to agree on a sort of a fundamental definition?
Well, for me, I sort of bristle a bit at the idea of life coaching. I think that's redundant. It's coaching to be one's best self, and you get to define that as a human being. We all do, and that's what my goal is to enable my clients to find their best selves. And life, our work is part of our life. Our sport is part of our life. As an equestrian, I've always had a coach in that, but that is part of my life. So that's why I say it's really coaching for the better of whoever and what you want.
Yeah, I'd agree that life coaching does seem redundant in a lot of ways. I'm a Stanford-trained psychologist, so I come in from a data standpoint and really think of it as an interpersonal relationship where people are coming together to work on mindset, skills, and behaviors to actually, push behavior change and cognitive change forward to maximize personal and professional development. And if it's done with evidence-based and science and quality and ROI and AI and all this stuff we'll talk about later on, it can really make a significant difference too.
I think the relationship part is important because it's about really, if you think about it, you have an intimate relationship where the benefit and value is that somebody can sort of push you beyond even your own perceptions or beliefs around what you can accomplish. And at Sounding Board, we focus on leader development. So I think, you can apply that sort of modality against different use cases, whether it's in your career or, mental health. But for us, we really think about it's that power of that relationship that really drives development in a way that's very different than traditional training or learning.
Totally. I mean, maybe the only thing to add there is, I think very strongly that coaching is this kind of synthesis of the present and the future. right? It's like understanding where you are today to form habits and change behavior for the future. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the future, but it's certainly not looking to the past as much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Here we are, we're sitting in the middle of a pandemic. The ground is not firm yet. We don't know how this is going to play. Various regions of the world are reacting differently, and organizations are facing new challenges. I can fill my calendar with organizations say, what should we do, Steve? Back to work, remote, hybrid, and so forth. Given where we are today, and the world of work was already changing before we went into the pandemic a year and a half ago, where is coaching going right now? Like tell us, what excites you about what you see, the opportunities you see, what makes you a little nervous, what concerns you, what opportunities do the people here have to leverage what's coming? I'm curious. And go anywhere with any of those that you want to.
Yeah, I think maybe I'll start. The thing that excites me most about coaching, well, the obvious thing is it's being democratized, right? Like coaching for the longest time was something that you did for executives, and today it's something that is widely available at different kind of parts of the organization. But now with more kind of consumption of it and more evangelization, there's more demand. And so with that brings questions around scale and how do you achieve scale through technology. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that kind of technology and the role technology can play in coaching in the future. And particularly by defining and changing the competencies that we use to coach to.
Yeah, I'd say demand has skyrocketed. We're up to 2,500 coaches in 90 countries speaking 46 different languages. And we've just established 2 offices globally, one in Munich and one in London. So it's pretty amazing to see the demand. Finally, I think people who've been in the coaching industry for a long time knew the power of coaching, but to see people actually getting access to coaching and quality coaching at scale just absolutely delights me. And I think post-COVID, it's needed now more than ever. And again, that integration between mental health and performance and physical health is one and the same. When we have more centeredness in ourselves, we do better work. And so to have a coach address you across your whole person, not just leadership, but also personal life. And I can talk more about how we're really creating like a very dynamic, integrative systems approach to coaching, where it's not just one coach. You can get referred to a specialist coach in nutrition or sleep, and then you can go to a coaching circle, sit 8 weeks with a group of 8 people, and get really defined coaching. So it's not a one size fits all. We're all about precision development, where people can get different types of coaching when they need it most, but still go back to their core coach when they need it. So it's a very system approach versus just one-on-one. That person can't solve everything for you all the time, and that's so exciting. And then to see it grow and being able to scale quality programs is, I get so excited.
I'm curious, the demand blew up. Were there dimensions of coaching that are increasingly demanded? Are there reasons why it's grown? What's going on?
I think the silver lining of COVID is that people are demanding more from their work. They want to see a greater focus on well-being. Global Talent Trend Study found that 1 out of every 2 employees want to see a greater focus on well-being at work. And it ties directly to performance, retention, and engagement, these big metrics that drive outcomes for organizations. So it's a really fantastic time. And then being able to get the metrics and data at scale to show organizations, hey, we can really move the needle for you in a lot of different ways, and provide insights to leaders in organizations so they can say, let me diagnose, this is what's going on in my organization. Let's lean in and fix this. It comes to this really incredible iterative feedback loop.
I think the other side that's exciting is previously coaching was always seen as something that was just directed towards the individual for the individual's benefit. But what we're seeing now is that organizations are waking up to the fact that, hey, this is a modality that actually has real business impact because, and that's important because, a lot of us, I think, we sell into companies. And so being able to marry the needs of the individual and them being able to develop while also meeting the needs that the organization needs in terms of their leadership bench, their talent, what companies are seeing is coaching is an incredibly powerful way to do that and to do that effectively and at scale. At Sounding Board, 60% of the people we coach are below the executive suite. So all of these things, I think, are fueling. It's like the genie's come out of the bottle, right? You've exposed all of these folks to this incredible modality. Now more and more people want it. So organizations are figuring out, how do we deploy this in more ways?
The other thing that I think has occurred as we look to making coaching more readily available throughout an organization is that it used to be you were sent to be coached when there was something wrong with you, or if you were broken.
To get fixed.
To get fixed. And now, and it was always a big secret. Like, oh, I don't want to acknowledge I have a coach. That means there's something wrong with me. And I think that over the last 18 months, the pendulum has swung. And I think now we see it as an honor that the organization is investing in us. And so even at the executive level, we really see an uptick in that executives, and what I hear a lot more frequently is looking at their emotional intelligence, looking at tapping their empathy, how to deal with the workforce, how to deal with themselves in a situation no one has experience with. And so some of us are good at crisis management, crisis leadership, but none of us have ever dealt at this level. And I think that is why, with leaders coming out and saying, I have a coach, I'm looking to improve, I'm looking to better reach, that it makes it even more acceptable for everyone in an organization to tap that. And that makes me very happy, because I think what it has done is ripped the shroud of secrecy off the issue of mental health and the issue of engagement, belonging. We need to see people, and we need to acknowledge their existence, and this is one way of doing that.
I think the interesting part about that, like the other side of the coin there, is that there's also a responsibility that comes with it, right? There's a huge demand, and it's a little bit wild, wild west, right? If we're being honest, right? Like coach, like you ask an executive coach how much they charge, it's anywhere from like $3,000 to $300, right? And so I think there needs to be a little bit of guided structure around it too, and that's where I see the responsibility of organizations, the responsibility of solutions to say, hey, this is coaching, it's not therapy. This is like leadership coaching, it's not sales coaching. This is competency-based coaching where you're working towards 5 skills over 6 months. This isn't just like in perpetuity, talk to someone and have a good time about talking about your mortgage, right? Like there needs to be a little bit of structure, and I think that's where I see, the next 6 to 12 months going.
It's interesting. So if I play back what I'm hearing from you is we're seeing an evolution from the perception of coaching being a situational to a systemic solve. And towards that end, Troy, you got it animated a second ago around, technology, and Jacinta and Christine and Jeanette. Like, we've got obviously, this whole dimension of AI that seems to be the goal that we're all going after. Should we be excited about technology? How are you seeing it relative to what we're here to talk about, which is relative to scaling? So the awareness, we need to do this on a more system level rather than just an individual episodic coaching. How is technology, how are new systems enabling that you're seeing? And if you could give us some examples, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I think that there's this false choice of like technology or humanity. I think that it feels like there's a trade-off, but it's not always one. For example, we think about executive coaching very much tied to like assessments, right? Like we basically have a cohort-based learning. The first thing everybody does with cohort-based learning is they take an assessment, and then they have an executive coaching session walking them through, hey, how do I interpret this feedback? We have a question now of like, how do we do that at scale? Does every single person in the cohort over time, we're doing thousands and thousands of cohorts, get an executive coaching session, or do we scale that through technology and make it more self-serve? I think the answer is probably use technology to scale that part of the learning process, but behavior change takes multiple modalities over time, right? So you infuse humanity in the later parts of the learning journey, but use technology to scale the beginning of it so you can measure it. So I get excited about it because I think there's real opportunity around it, and I also think it's a false choice to say what's the trade-off, because it's not always a trade-off.
I would agree with that. I think that using technology to provide access to information, to resources, to data, to examples of what people are struggling with is a great way to provide one-to-many. I think where the one-to-one relationship needs to occur when people are reflecting on their personal journey and what changes they need to make, and take the feedback, whether it's through a formal assessment or 360, and really looking at how people perceive you, how they receive you in the workplace. And just a footnote here on the assessment thing. This is not something to fool around with. You should understand what assessments are designed to do, make sure they are valid, that they are reliable, and don't fool around with them. And some of you may have seen the HBO Max special largely on the MBTI. This is not a slam on MBTI, but the problem is people that were using it, and they were using it incorrectly. And so that is something that we need to address. There's no regulation, and frankly, there's no formal certification. Anybody can do anything with assessments, and that's one of the things I'm hoping we'll see standardization and a level of professionalism added.
I mean, I think the thing that we think a lot about is the fact that technology can enable an incredible amount of context and data. So being able to use that to then actually build better experiences, some of which might happen human to human with your coach, some might happen through automated workflows or notifications, but being able to have access to a level of data that you never had, I think, when all of these, when coaching was just delivered in a service model. For us, we think a lot about, coaching is, if you think about it, it's a conversation, right? The heart of it is a conversation, and it's highly unstructured. So how do you think about how technology can help you structure that, filter that, organize that in a way that can level up the insights that you'd want to bring to the company, but still maintain that confidentiality that you really need between the coach and coachee to drive real development and mindset shifts and behavior shifts. So for us, that's where we've spent a lot of time, and where I see, beyond just the obvious of scale, right? The fact that all of us, we deliver most of our services virtually, right? Now we can reach people anytime, anywhere. So for me, I think, like Jacinta, it's an incredible time to be in this space, given the demand and what you can see where technology can push the industry. So.
And yeah, I get so excited I'm a science geek. You'll hear me say science a lot, so I'm warning you ahead of time, but I get so excited. So at BetterUp, we have almost 800,000 coaching sessions. So we're getting close to almost data for 1 million coaching sessions. What we can do with that data is incredible. That gives us so much insight into understanding what works, what drives behavior change, what makes for a good coach member, we call them members, or client match. So we've created a coach matching algorithm, but we're always up-leveling that algorithm because, as Christine said, that match between the person and the coach matters so much. But then we can take that data and you arm our coaches with data-driven insights to up-level their coaching. And our coaches are I love our coaches. I feel like they're the best in class. We only have a 9% acceptance rate to get into our coach community. It's incredible. And we look for growth mindset where people are wanting to learn and up-level their skills. So our coaches are getting better. They're providing better service to our clients. And then we can provide even better organizational insights. It's like this, everyone wins. It's pretty incredible. And we can get more and more precise about what a person needs, when they need it, and what they need most, and get it to them at the right time and place more efficiently. So it's incredible. I can't wait till we get to the 1 million session mark so I can take a look at that data and really, keep innovating from that. So it's a really tremendously exciting time.
Okay, you're gonna have to stop teasing us. So you're gonna have to give us an insight. Give us something that, for example, these 800,000 coaching sessions have revealed. Give us something.
One of them really big that we found is that if coaches that assign personalized, so it does have to have the human piece in there. Assignments or little tiny behavior change, homework, we call it, in between sessions drives faster change, because you can have an aha moment in a session, but if you don't go and actually practice that outside the session, you're not going to see change. It's really cool to have that aha moment, but if you're not putting it into your life, it's not going to make a change. So, and then when coaches see that, they go, oh, I want to do that, and then that drives it. But I will say, and I know we can talk about this later, and I'll stop talking now because I'm get too excited, but ethics, like with all this, we have to think about ethics so much because, as the rest of the group was saying, it's been the Wild West and not regulated. Yeah, we can talk about that.
And that's a place where, being a recovering human resource professional personally, I lost count of the times I've had an executive come to me and say, we need to get this person a coach. And I translate that to mean I need to find some dirt so that I can let them go or put them on a performance warning there. And hopefully that's diminishing, but that's also given stigma to the HR profession as you're in the pocket of executives. The only reason you're really doing that 360 is to use it for performance management rather than coaching and development. And this is the rub that my sort of innate fear as a North America trained HR leader is around, does the use of technology, does it threaten the trust, right? And maybe this is a place where we can spend some time. Has the pandemic, the need for us to learn how to use different mediums to coach and interact, how have you seen that playing out? For better, for worse, the challenges. Are you seeing opportunities there? Are you seeing, well, we have to invest more because we're not able to build that same level of human connection that we might in person? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, one of the things that I think everyone should be thinking about is, if you think about employee experience, how much of that was also driven by the fact that you were in the same room with your employees, that they could hear conversations, that they could see what was happening across the org, and that contributed to their employee experience. Now, if you think about us being in a remote environment where their employee experience is them sitting in their office or in their room, what are going to be those relationships and those points that really actually drive their employee experience? For us, we've seen that means your managers and your leaders, your team leads, become even more critically important. So, we've all heard the stat, right? 50% of your workforce leaves because of their manager. I'd go out to say that number will likely increase because now your manager becomes an even more integral part of driving that employee experience. So manager enablement, which is a lot of what we do at Sounding Board, helping your managers actually be better managers, right? How to communicate, set priorities. I think that is something that we're seeing organizations really think heavily about because you have to completely rethink the way that you come at what is employee experience.
Yeah, I think maybe to add on that, you mentioned a couple things, Steve, that resonated. So I think post-pandemic, everyone's read the news about the turnover tsunami, they're calling it, right? The
Great resignation.
Right, the great resignation,
Thank
whatever.
you, Korn Ferry.
whatever it is, I love it. But the other side of that coin is that people were waiting for for whatever reason, our work lives gave us stability last year when the rest of the universe did not give us stability. And so we're seeing the after effect of that today. Now that puts more impetus on employers to provide opportunities for employees to get them to stay. There's only a finite amount of promotions, raises, and opportunities internally, but coaching is positive sum, right? Learning opportunities aren't this zero-sum game. So we're seeing employers really use that as a retention tool. So I would say more than ever this year, I have personally seen that a lot more used as kind of a lever that organizations are using.
I also think that there are organizations that were pretty well connected with their employees anyway. They've started at a much different place and a different plane. But the majority are playing catch up right now. How do you be empathetic? I lead a mastermind group for HR leaders once a week. We call it our sanity session. And last May, this one CHRO arrived to our call and her hair was literally on fire. And she said, the CEO sent me a note and said, handle this COVID thing. And she said, what well, I won't say what she said, but she said, what does that even mean, right? And that he was separating himself from the personal aspect of what that meant. And I think so that many organizations now are really catching up with that and saying, we have to be engaged with our employees and we have to improve management. We've known since Gallup published the book in 1995, that managers weren't prepared, but yet they are the lever for productivity, engagement, and retention. Now we really, we can do something about it. And I think the realization has been the big win of the pandemic, in the workplace.
I want to test a theory with you, and I'm curious what your reaction is. I feel we're in an era where the future is less clear for both employer and employees today than at any point in history. We also have a reality where you can see more of what's possible with your background, education, experiences, and how to apply it. What are you seeing organizations want to help drive career growth, or want to push the ownership for career growth onto the employees and have it become more of a self-service? What are you seeing in the coaching conversations you and your teams are having around that career conversation? Because where I want to head to with that is the ethical challenge of, you're assigned to coach someone, and can you help me figure out how to get out of this company or how to get a different job and how you handle that? But I'm just curious on the ownership of careers. Where are you seeing more pushing the ownership to employees, or companies are still trying to say, hey, we're going to grow your career here?
Well, training and development is one of the top 5 attractors, and it has been for forever, I think. We just have pretended it wasn't. And so now we can't avoid it. And so I think the recognition that development is something that as an employer, that's part of our responsibility. But truthfully, you look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, I'm not going to leave my future to the hands of anybody. I'm going to take it and embrace it and do what I need to do to be my best self too. So I think there's a joint shift in ownership, and I think that's a very positive one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I see a joint shift in ownership and it being positive, and that, as we were speaking about earlier, traditionally, way back when, like, coaching was reserved for senior executives or remedial. That guy's a jerk, but he's a great performer, so can we make it work? And it usually doesn't work, right? And so now they can get, they're giving it to emerging managers, which is so exciting. Instead of unlearning skills that weren't serving you, that got you there, and then relearning new ones, setting them up for success early on and investing in their career by helping them develop as leaders is really, I think, important for employers to think about, and also employees really find it valuable. The high-performing employees want development. They want to see their companies investing in their professional and personal growth as well.
Well, Steve, you were just saying when we were prepping for this that what the sort of average tenure was, 2.5 years now for major companies. What was the stat again?
Right. The stat I saw for the top 15 most valued technology companies, the median tenure is 2 years of employment.
Right. And so to me, that's that's important, because if you think about, before, what would you do? You might spend your entire career at one company. And in that case, the onus really was on the company and the organization to develop you to move up in the organization. I think as tenures have gotten shorter and we've been more fluid, a lot of that got pushed to the individual. Like, you have to own your own career development. I think what the pandemic is showing is there has to be that sort of meeting of the minds in the middle. There's been, in the pandemic, obviously a big trend has been around the rise of mental health, right, and how critical and important that is. But in some ways, I also think about that's very important, and I'm so glad that that's a conversation. But we can't let that be sort of a way that organizations abdicate their responsibility for also thinking about the things they do that can drive poor mental health in their employee base, right? And a lot of that has to do with your managers, your systems, the hierarchy of how you've set up the company and the organization. So
the culture.
It's the culture. So that has to be a sort of 2-part responsibility, I think.
Right, and maybe the last thing to add, I think about this 2 ways, right? It's the responsibility of the individual to create inertia. It's the responsibility of the organization to create an environment and conditions for that inertia to turn into momentum. right? And that can mean a lot of different things. Culture could certainly mean making sure that you have equitable practices in place so that that inertia reflects equally, no matter who is creating it.
Let's go back to culture. This is, a favorite topic for me. When you're entertaining working with a client, what elements in their culture make you optimistic that your work's going to be well received? What are some of the things that you see happening that are going to be good signs so people can sort of help promote those things in their cultures that are attending here?
I mean, I think you can't not talk about leadership and role modeling, right? So oftentimes one of the most telling signals is who's sponsoring this development and where's the budget for that coming from? And is there even communications from your executive leaders about this learning opportunity and really promoting and pushing that out to their employees? Because you can have lots of benefits that you roll out and programs that you give, but if that's not actually modeled at the highest levels and all the way down through the organization, that becomes very challenging for employees to reconcile. Like there's a dissonance there if there isn't that actual sponsorship at the top.
I think actual articulation of values and principles. How do you do the work of the job? And I think alignment of values is one of the things that employers and prospective employees alike really need to dig into to make sure that there's a good fit before you ever accept the job. And I see a lot more emphasis on how and why in addition to what. And I think that's a good shift.
I would say organizations who view learning as like a kind of this constant journey and experience as opposed to like episodic. That's like one of the biggest signals I have around like, okay, this company is we can have a conversation and we'll have, I'll ask 5 more questions to understand how committed they are to it. But it's not a check the box thing. If you bring a coach in, it's not because you're doing performance management, right? It's not because you have a leader you're trying to, step up to the plate in some other form. It's because this is just intrinsically something that you believe in.
Anything to add to that, Jacinta?
Well, I'm +1. I'm like shaking my head. +1 to what they said, but yeah, I think executive sponsorship is so fundamental. If it's not really seen at the top as this is really important to our company culture, this is what we stand for. And the great news is I've seen like CHROs that I've connected with, the ones who are really on the cutting edge, who are innovative, they're so excited, so excited about what coaching can bring, about really instilling behavior change through intimacy, that one-on-one connection at scale. So I feel like people are catching on, but it's a must-have in order to really get buy-in so that it filters through across the entire organization.
I also think that there is an element of participation, of transparency, and open dialogue. We've all worked for people where the leadership were demagogues. They literally couldn't, their voice was the only one that mattered. And I think people should be very wary of that because there isn't a human on the face of the earth that hasn't been wrong at least 12 times yet today. So, really, like, it is, you get so much more out of people when you encourage them to contribute and to make commentary about those sacred cows. So I think those are the things to look out for.
Are you seeing organizations solicit your help in teaching their leaders how to become coaches rather than just recipients of coaching? Yeah. Can you give some examples?
Yep. Well, so we just finished a report on the state of the leadership coaching industry. We surveyed over 400 professionals. And one really interesting fact is, well, one, almost all of them plan to continue to invest in coaching as an approach. But what we see is that almost all of them also plan to do it with a mix of internal resources as well as external resources. So what that means is they're looking for ways to scale. So it may be training or certifying internal employees to take on those coaching skills to be able to scale that further out through the organization. supplementing that through external vendors like ourselves or solutions, but they're all looking for ways to be able to drive more and train more people across the organization to have the skill of coaching because they've seen how effective it's been.
And to use it as a means to drive towards productivity and better performance. So, the whole performance process, ranking and rating, raving and ranting, stack ranking, or even the annual, biannual review process, we all know it's shallow and, it just takes a lot of time. The key is, how do you provide feedback that people can take and action so that they get better? And real time is a heck of a lot more effective than once or twice a year.
I actually think that is something that I'm not seeing as much today, but I anticipate to see next year. I think like the train the trainer model has always been like a popular one, but particularly right now in this moment where coaching is center stage, but not maybe as kind of structured as you might think. Once that structure comes into effect, then organizations are going to think about how can we empower people internally to then take the baton and run with it. So I think that's less relevant today, but that's something I definitely see in the future.
As a parent of multiple teenagers, one of my biggest fears when I look at the future is the prospective loss of unstructured dialogue and conversations, and this 140 character tweet that I'll call my kids and they'll text me back, "What do you want?" Instead of answer the phone.
You should have texted them. That's
right.
why.
Are you guys are sort of the canaries in the coal mine? Are you? Should we be worried about the future of communication from what you're seeing? Should we be encouraged by it from the coaching that you're having? I mean, this is the root of every issue that I've dealt with in my employee relations career. Is I was in the same room with people and two people saw something completely different because it was interpreted differently. And I'm just wondering, are we going to get more tangled in the future? Do you think we should be optimistic that no, we're going to find our way through this technology-dependent universe that we're creating for our kids?
I tend to be an optimist. I'm optimistic about it, especially scaling coaching, because again, we refer to it at BetterUp as intimacy at scale, where people can have.
Do you work with
those
teenagers?
Conversations and practices. Hopefully, in the future, that is a goal. I will let you know when we offer that. But I do think it's a chance for people to really have those intimate conversations where maybe throughout their whole week or day, they don't get to sit down and really talk about hard things. And we know loneliness is a global growing epidemic, and it's as dangerous for you as being an alcoholic. It's as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day for your physical health. It's serious. And I think people want connection, and teaching people managers especially, how to coach, have those coaching conversations, to have that intimacy at work, have that connection at work, it matters so much. If we have a breakdown in community at work, that's one of the biggest drivers of burnout, which is also a growing epidemic. So, and belonging and inclusion and all these things that are so fundamental for driving innovation. We have to have disparate thinking to drive creativity. So I am an optimist in that I think people are realizing the value, want the value, and can have space to practice, and also bring that at scale back to their organizations.
Ditto. Meet people where they are and help them see that it's not just the technology is a way that there's other venues for communication and connection.
Okay, we're right at time. This panel is incredibly humble. You need to understand the background of what we've got. We've got a few doctors here. We've got people who created rogue coaching organizations within their company and then went off to found companies. We have a couple of authors, myself included, here. We have books in the bookstore that we've authored. Please check it out. But thank you all for spending the time. We're being asked, because of the thin walls in this conference area, that we would love to continue the conversation, but out in the main lobby area. So thank you all, and please join me in thanking all the panelists here for joining today.